not another kid in her class that can do that excites me, but it also breaks my heart. Like other kids don't know that you can walk by this plant and that's a radish. They look at that as something that's a weed, not realizing that their parents go to the grocery store and buy that. My daughter will say like that's ready to go, and she will pull it out of the ground and eat it. And that's like, for me, like when I hear like teachers talking about like where they're at on their education levels, or because an adult says you need to be at this point at this grade, I'm like, yeah, but how about me and you, Miss Teacher, go out into a field and let's see where you're at. Let's see if you can point out what can make you survive when this education thing fails. And that's gives us excitement. Like my daughter knows when to say something needs more salt. Myself and my ex-wife is a pastry chef, but a very talented chef as well. And so my daughter, like, she'll taste my food and say like that needs more salt. I'm like, you're right, it totally needs more salt.
That must be the cutest thing in the entire
I'm like,
world.
you 7-year old, or my son will sit there and eat like his chicken skin off a chicken thigh and then be like, take mine, and be like, yours could have been a little more crispier. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. God, like I'm getting critiqued by a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. But then that makes me so happy because, you know, I was a terrible student. I was like probably the worst student ever. But there's something that drives me in the food world where my kids have already surpassed me to where I am now. Like when I first moved to Napa, they are there. So the world is their oyster, and my kids have tried oysters and wasn't their thing. But I didn't know what an oyster was until I was 27 years old. So
Right, where now kids, at various ages are just eating chicken nuggets and fries. And parents
yeah,
are buying it and, throwing it in the nuke and serving it to their kids because they're whining about, carrots and radish. I can't see kids
hey,
eating radishes with like butter or anything like that. But if
yeah,
you bring it and introduce them like you have been doing, I think that's a gift you're giving to your kids to have that, knowledge.
yeah. And like I said, it wasn't a thing where me and my wife we didn't decide we want our kid to grow up like this. That was just the lifestyle that we lived. We had a garden in our backyard. We happened to at that point work. We both worked at Meadowood, so we had that garden at our disposal, if you will. And then also we lived across the street from the French Laundry. So like my daughter grew up, like she learned to walk in the French Laundry garden with the gardeners. So like our morning started with us like going across the street and the gardener pulling things, and it wasn't necessarily us deciding that's how we want our kids to grow up. It was again two chefs whose lifestyle fit that profile, and it worked out to the fact that like our kids, when they want snacks in our house, it's not like they go to the refrigerator. My daughter eats bell peppers like they're apples, as long as they're good. Like snap peas are like those go through like instead of potato chips, they have snap peas. Radishes. Cherry tomatoes are not safe at our house. Like if we have an idea for cherry tomatoes, we need to buy a little extra because those will be gone before they ever make it to a dish. Um, Seasoning, like it's just too spicy. This is too salty. The pasta's overcooked. Like these are things that our kids judge myself and my ex on because they grew up on this food, and that make like it. Sometimes I'm like, what do you know?
Right.
Like you don't know anything. But then I'm like, what? But then other times, like we're just like, that is the coolest thing ever that and that's it's way more joy than I ever thought. Like I didn't know what kind of dad I would be, and I'm not necessarily the award-winning dad. I'm the chef dad who's always gone. But I think with me and my partner, we have made that point to again because this is a new generation. like we found a way to both work all the time and yet bring our kids into it to where they can still be kids, but they also are around food. You know, they're not necessarily the kids that are stuck in a room in the restaurant, which we don't want, but we also want them to like know what good food is and know where their food comes from and understand that a pig is a pig and a cow is a cow and a chicken is a chicken and an egg is an egg, and that, you know, growing your own food like carrots, radishes aren't something to be taken advantage of. Like we need to take it. Like don't take advantage of a carrot. Somebody out there somewhere grew that carrot, so don't waste it. You know, and I think my kids get that.
No, what a better way to. I mean, amazing. What a better way to start a podcast. But we kind of been live through that entire segment. I'd like to welcome everybody to Late Night with Chefs.
Hello,
I'm
everybody.
Truffle Boy and Doug reporting for duty, and today we are bringing some Bay vibes to you guys. Doug, do you want to introduce our guest chef of the evening?
I'd love to. Hello, everybody. It is great to be back. What a crazy day it has been. If you've been following our story today, we had some food shoots, some beach shoots. So it's awesome to be hanging out with you guys tonight. As Vlad said, we have some Bay vibes in the house tonight. We have Chef Kyle joining us out of Nappa. How's it going, Chef?
Very well. How are you? Good
We're
to see you.
doing very well. It was awesome to kind of hear that intro. Like Truffle Boy said, no better way to start a podcast.
Thank you.
What an inspiring story about, teaching your kids and kind of teaching the next generation, as we often talk about on this podcast. So, Chef, it kind of hinted on it a little bit, but what is your journey? That's what we're all here for. So, kind of, what's the start of that for you?
Oh, so this whole journey I'm on, this chef thing I'm on, was an accident. Completely a gigantic accident. This should have never happened at all. You know, from a young age, I thought I was going to join the Marine Corps. That was the goal. I did everything I was supposed to do to join the Marine Corps. You know, I joined the Sea Cadets. My dad was a Marine. My stepdad was a Marine. We did all the steps. And then I graduated 2003. 2003, my dad was deployed in Iraq. And he was like, dude, you can't enlist. You need to take some time and wait until I get back. So I said, okay. And in the meantime, he said, my mom was like, you need to find a job. And I was like, oh, that, you know, I was like, I don't even know what that means. What?
JOB,
What's the
what's
job?
that?
I was
Yeah.
like, what's a job? I was like, what? And she's like, you need to make a resume. I'm like, what's a resume? I was like, what? I was like, I don't even know.
English, mom.
I was so confused. I remember one time, and it's very ironic that I remember this because I don't remember anything from this class that I was in high school. I kind of dicked around on my senior year and hit this point where I missed all the elections, and the only thing available was this cooking class. I don't remember I don't remember the teacher's name. I don't remember what the class was. I don't remember ever cooking anything, washing dishes, holding a knife. I don't remember anything. But I do remember this teacher pulling me aside one day and telling me, you are not taking this class seriously. Like, you're going to fail this class. And I remember looking her in the face, like as square as I could, and be like, I don't need to know this. I will never be a chef. None of this matters to me at all. And now I'm like 20 years later, I'm like, God, like
Yeah.
what a
I
twist of
owe that
irony. Like,
teacher an apology.
yeah, I'm like, God, like if I could find her, I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you what her name started with, you know? Um, so my dad was in Iraq. I started dishwashing, or I started busting tables, and that morphed into dishwashing. And then, as it happens with so many people, you know, dishwashing turned into that prep guy didn't show up. I started prep cooking, and my first 2 weeks working as a line cook, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was at a shitty little restaurant, but there was something about working on the line. I went home and I told my mom, I was like, I'm not joining the Marine Corps. I was like, I want to be a chef. And I didn't even know what that meant. Like, I have no food memories you know, me and my mom talked. We don't remember any food, like eating dinner as a family or having these food memories. I didn't grow up picking green beans with my grandma or cooking or having any ambitions that or fine dining or anything. Like it was just, there's something about the drive and something about the kitchen culture that just really, like, my first 2 weeks in, I knew that's where I belong.
What was it like kind of breaking that to your father, who is probably, he's ready for you to become a Marine like him and, everyone else?
I think it was hard hearing that because I broke that. I was the first one in my family since World War One to be that. I broke it, like I kind of like gave that last name away, if you will.
Yeah.
And it did take. I I've been cooking for 20 years. My daughter is 8, almost 8. It took until my daughter was 1 year old for my parents to really
Kind of like acknowledge.
accept my cooking. Yeah, like it
Yeah.
was it at first it was, I was cooking and everybody really liked where I was going, and cooking in there was something about the pressure of the cook. Like I got to do everything that I would have to do in the Marine Corps anyway. I was held to a standard. I had a schedule. If I wasn't there, somebody would be there to let me know that I fucked up royally. Like I was part of a team. I was things that I was taught, but also I wasn't a Marine. That was the best part.
Right.
But it, for me, it was an outlet, and I had always was that weird kid, that wanted to be an artist, but I didn't even know about food. Food was like over here. I didn't even know about it. So I like tried writing. That didn't work. I tried art. That didn't work. I tried all of these things, poetry, all this stuff, and it wasn't clicking. And then I was like, okay, I want to be a history. I want to do this. I want to do this. And then when I finally found cooking, I was like, okay, this is different, and
Yeah.
being the obsessive person that I am, I'm like, okay, I like this. Like I felt comfortable in the kitchen. Like I felt like I was one of those weird individuals that really, with the chaos, I felt at home, like in the chaos. You got instant gratification in chaos. That like you never know what you're walking into. You always know you're set up for failure, but with hard work, with push, with drive, like you can make it happen. And then also like this on this other level, like I was giving people something I can never have, which is happiness. Like I couldn't gratify my own happiness, but I saw people happy. I saw people leaving, and that I think made a huge change for me too. And that was really what drove me to like. It was just I found a place that was my home. Like for some reason, it clicked, and I couldn't wait to wear my first chef coat. And it was like it was
Yeah.
just like I said, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I dedicated. Like at that moment, I dedicated my entire life, and yeah, I know a lot of people say this, but like kitchens did save my life. It kept me out of trouble. And you hear that like the restaurant business saved my life, but a lot of people ask me like, how did you stay out of trouble? I didn't have time to get in trouble, nor did I
Yeah.
have the
You're too busy
finances
behind the
to get in
stove.
trouble.
Yeah.
Me and my
Yeah.
roommate, we worked from 6 a.m. until 2 a.m. every day. So that didn't leave us a lot of time to do anything stupid. And then with what money we had left, we really didn't have money to go out and do anything stupid anyway. And so that's one of the things that drove me too, is just like I always had somewhere to be. And even as a young cook, the chefs would take me under the wing knowing I would be there, coming into work for free. Like I would start asking, like, can you teach me how to butcher meat? Can you teach me how to do this? And they're like, yeah, but I'm not going to pay you to do that. So I'd start showing up for free. And as soon as I started doing that, the chef started taking the initiative to boosting my, like, making me feel like I was part of the team, and there's nowhere else I wanted to be. And that's what built me to where I am now. Is like I still to this day, like I feel more at home in the kitchen than I do anywhere else. And it wasn't until my daughter was born that my parents finally came out, and there was a moment where we lived across the street from the French Laundry, and 6 months before, my parents like, okay, you have a kid now. When are you going to start like thinking about your career and your future? I'm like, I'm doing pretty good. Like I'm the chef at the #2 luxury hotel in the country. We're number 25 in the world. I think I'm doing okay.
Right, and they're still asking,
and
even
they're
though
like,
you're
yeah,
number
but you're
2
a
in the
cook.
country,
I'm like,
they're still
sure,
like,
but I was like, I'm doing. I think we're doing okay.
When are you going to be a Marine though?
Out to meet yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I think I'm doing okay. And then my parents came out to visit, and as we walk across, like we're walking past the French Laundry Garden, Thomas Keller's doing an interview, and he stops the interview, he walks up to me and my then wife, my daughter, who he knows very well, and my parents, and he like stops and he introduces himself to my parents, and he's like, Chef, how are you? I'm like, Chef, good to see you. And he's like, hey, Harper. And he like, at that moment, my parents were like, oh, maybe this cooking thing is something. All of a sudden my parents are proud of me, and at this point I'm like,
it took Thomas Keller, really? Come on.
Yeah, I was like, come on, man. Like, God, dude.
I can only imagine, Thomas Keller and his whites and long apron and
like the long apron. He walked across the like.
I mean,
like,
if that's not,
like,
trotting around the
like,
garden.
It, like, he's got that big post where the bees are, and like he walked around it and like walked up. He was like, Chef, how are you? Hi, Harper. And they like introduced him. My parents were like, oh my God, my chef's son. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Really? Whatever,
Hey, Thomas, we couldn't have done this like 2 years ago, man.
Exactly. So, but yeah, that's kind of how, that's like the short story, and there's a lot that's happened in between, but that's kind of, here we are now, 20 years later.
Yeah, I mean, what a grind.
As you were kind of having those, first 2 weeks in the industry, what do you remember? What was the, your outlook on the industry at that time? How did you find out about, Thomas Keller and Meadow and, Nappa and all this? Like, what were those sources that you were like excited in getting this information from?
Sure. Okay, so like I said, I didn't know anything about food. Like I didn't know anything about the restaurant business. Like if you were to tell me you're a cook and you're a chef, to me you're the same fucking person, So let alone the fine dining world, like I no idea. This is before Ratatouille. This is before the Food Network. Like I didn't know anything. Like I used to take MREs for lunch, meals ready to eat from the, like it's like, so I finally, like I was working at a place called the Fox and Hound, it's like a really nice Applebee's, and like that's where I fell in love with this shit, like that's where I was indoctrinated with this whole, like, me telling the kitchen manager, I was like, oh, I was supposed to go on a date with my girlfriend tonight. And I opened, they're like, yeah, but you want to be a chef, you want to work here. I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, yeah, we need you to work tonight. I'm like, okay. And then finally I progressed to go across the parking lot to a outlet mall. And there was a restaurant there, and I worked at the outlet mall. And I got my first chef coat, and I was so proud to wear the chef coat. Like I remember my girlfriend at the time, this is 20 years ago, like drove by my apartment and I like threw this stupid chef coat on and walked out. And I was so excited to be wearing this stupid chef coat. And now I'm like looking, I was like, it was like see-through cotton. It was so bad, but like
with like the big white buttons.
Yeah, the big white buttons.
Yeah,
way below. Yep. I was like so proud to be wearing this chef coat. I was like, I'm the shit. Like I just got my first pair of chef pants.
Yeah.
Like the chili pepper ones and my first pair of Crocs. Like I was like, I'm in
Black
it.
Crocs, chili pepper,
I'm like, I'm
pants.
part of this shit now.
Yeah.
But then, so at this restaurant at the outlet mall, there was a Barnes and Noble, and I'd be sitting on break, and I'd be like, like you can only wander around in your douchey chef pants and your douchey clogs and your chef coat that doesn't fit you.
Right, they're like two sizes too big.
Yeah, walk around the outlet mall so much, thinking you're cool. Like you see your friend from high school, you're like, oh yeah, what's up? Oh, I'm going to college, I'm a chef.
Yeah.
So then I'd start going to Barnes and Noble, and I go straight to the kitchen books, having no idea what I'm looking for at all.
Right.
And then I found the French Laundry Cookbook, and I looked at this book, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Like, excuse my language, but I was like looking at this book and the pictures, and I'm like, "What?"
Oh
I was
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay." I was like, "All right, I'm never cool." I was like, I don't even know what any of this means." I was like looking at the words, no idea what they mean. Looking at the picture, the garnish, everything. I'm like, close the book. I was like, I don't even know what. Yeah, cool. Put it back. And then I started reading Kitchen Confidential from Anthony Bourdain at the bookstore because I couldn't afford to buy the book. So on my break, I'd go to Barnes and Noble, read the book, earmark it, put it back. Next day, go back, read it, read it. And again, this is before Top Chef and all this thing. So, as a kid who had no idea what he was looking for, I didn't have those ambitions to like go outside of my world. So I
Right.
did what I thought I needed to do, and I worked in Tucson at the best I could do. Like I definitely sourced the best restaurants I could, and ended up working at some of the best restaurants in Tucson. I ended up helping Sam Fox, who owns Fox Restaurant Concepts, open his second restaurant, which was at the time like voted best restaurant in Tucson and all these things. And I tried my best, not knowing what else was out there. Fast forward a couple years, I was working at the Westin La Paloma, which was a hotel in Tucson, and like I was hitting that ceiling where I was like, okay, there's something else out there, like and then I watched an episode of Top Chef, and they were at a restaurant called Bricks in Nappa. I had no idea what Bricks was. I had no idea what Nappa was. I Googled it. So that the French Laundry is down the street from there. I was like, okay, that book I saw, this restaurant, fuck it. Turned in my 2 weeks at the Westin La Paloma. Had never been to the Bay Area, never been to San Francisco, never been to Napa, never been really traveling. I turned in my 2 weeks like an idiot, jumped on a plane with nowhere to go, with my knives, my clogs. At this point, I was wearing checkers, and I was like, I hope they have
Wait,
chef
you
food
didn't
I
get
can
on the
have.
plane with your chili peppers?
Nah, I had passed that. Like somebody told me
Ah,
that's pretty
damn, chef.
easy, and I moved past it. I still have them. Don't worry. They're shorts now. I wear them around the house.
There you go.
But
4th of July, chef and his chili
yeah,
peppers.
exactly. Grilling the
Yes,
food.
I love it.
So I got on the plane, flew to SFO, took a taxi to a Bricks because I saw it on Top Chef. Walked in the front door like, hey, here's my resume. Got a job there. And that set me up for everything. And I think it was like that weird, something lined up at the point where I said, okay, if I don't walk off this ledge, like I'm going to become a fucking hotel chef, and like there's nothing wrong with that, but like I knew I wanted more. I didn't even know what that meant,
Yeah.
but I wanted more. I knew, and I told myself on the plane there, I was like, okay, they have a garden. So from what I've researched and learned about, the French Laundry has a garden and Bricks has a garden. So I'm only going to work at restaurants that have gardens. That became one of those unobtainable goals. Like I always tell my cooks now, like set unattainable goals. Like I am only going to work in places where I can grow my own food. And got to Bricks, worked there, met my wife, had kids, and that opened up the world. Like I experienced Napa Valley, and I started just like embracing it and really going for it. And to me, there was no such thing as a stupid question. And I worked for, like, if I was scheduled at 3, I'd show up at 11. To make sure that I could make sure my mise en place is done, but also that I can watch the chef butcher a pig or a goat or a lamb, or be out there harvesting with the gardeners, or just taking it all in. And then that ended up me staging at the French Laundry. That ended up me getting to work at Meadowwood, doing dinners with Chocolate Pan, just by being like not turning down an opportunity. And I think that's what a lot
Right.
of cooks these days don't realize is like, if you put in the work and you keep yourself open to opportunities, like the world will open up. Like I have surpassed every goal that I have ever wanted. Like as a cook, when I first started out to where I am now, I have surpassed every goal that I would ever thought was imaginable. Like since the beginning of Bottle Rock, I worked the culinary stage, where I'm working with the most famous chefs and celebrities and doing things like, and I find myself asking myself, how did I get here? Like there's no, like if you look at the training, like there's no reason I should be here. Like in high school, I said I will never be a chef. And now I'm working with Michael Lapagio and his brother, helping him get his mise en place ready to go on stage. Helping, Morimoto bring the gigantic ahi on stage with two gigantic sumo wrestlers to set a world record with the guy from Guinness. Like, I'm like, how am I here? Helping Imagine Dragons set up to go. Like, it's just, I think I set an unattainable goal, and that led me to where I am now, to where, I have surpassed anything I could have thought I would ever know about food, flavor, guest relations, hospitality. Like I have zero regrets.
Yeah, and I liked how you kind of talked about, we obviously have a due diligence to our young culinarians in the field and kind of bringing them on and continuing this level of growth. And one of the things that we've talked about before, and you kind of hinted at it as well tonight, was that you kind of were open to all opportunities. You never know where an opportunity is going to take you. And saying no to something that you may deem as small in the moment could be detrimental, down the line.
Exactly. And I never, excuse me 1 second.
Yeah.
But I never said no to an opportunity. And I've had a lot of people tell me that I was in the right place at the right time. And that's fair, but I put myself in those opportunities, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like
you put yourself in the place.
Exactly. Like I saw an opportunity and I was offered if I wanted to take it, and I took it, and that's been a huge thing. And it's not about taking an opportunity that's going to screw somebody over by any means, but it's also been, taking yourself out of your comfort zone. I remember the first time I was asked to do a dinner with Jacques Pepin, I was like,
who?
What?
Wait,
I was like,
dinner with what? Me?
Yeah, I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Like, you want me to what? And then, but I took myself out of that comfort zone. And then the second was super cool, and it's super chill. And it's funny how like I think the restaurant business is one of those places where you're allowed to take yourself out of your comfort zone. And if you make a mistake, that's for the best. Like a lot of other we're not doctors, we're not saving the world, we're not trying to send people to the moon. Like if we make a mistake, somebody's might be like, that tasted like shit, but
Right.
like we're allowed to push ourselves to the limit of like what we can do and what we can prove to ourselves.
Right.
And that I think is amazing. It's an amazing opportunity. Like I grew up in the desert and now I can walk through a garden and not only know like what something is, but I can know how it's grown, what's edible, what's not. And that's because I put myself out there. And the hospitality is like that last weird world where you get what you want out of it.
Definitely.
Like you just want to get paid and you want to just get tipped and you want to just do the job, like that's there and you can do it, but there is no limit to how far you can go. Like you get to be exactly who you want, and the level of work you put into it is there, and there's nobody there stopping you. And I think this is one of those last worlds where people, like, we encourage, as a chef, I know, and I think, Grant Achatz and Thomas Keller take on the same approach, and the owner of Provisions, where I'm at right now. Like, we not only want to see you grow here for our sake, but we want to give you the tools that when you move on, you're better than we are. Like, we want you to be better than you were when you got here. So, like, you came in with these set of skills, and now when you move on, you can be better and go on to do something better and keep developing and keep growing. And there's a lot of industries where you don't get that access.
Yeah, not only, you kind of talked about it, not only that access to such talent, but also the very direct correlation to what you put in is what you get out. And just like you
Exactly.
said, you can clock in at your 3 o'clock shift and then clock out at your 11 o'clock, and you can have your prep, and you could have done all the dishes good and you cleaned your station and that's it. But it's when you come in at 11 a.m., when you're checking with the chef, when you're doing those deep cleanings. I mean, when the inside of the fryer looks, spotless. And so it's all those little extras and all those things, like you said, those equate to the difference maker at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think, the hospitality industry is also, like, we accept everybody, like, I cannot remember the last time I asked somebody if they have a high school diploma, let alone a college degree. Like, if you come to tell me you have a college degree, I don't care. Like, are you going to show up to work on time?
Right.
Like, are you going to give
Right.
it your all? Like, can you handle criticism? Like, I don't, like, you don't have a high school degree. Okay. Are you going to show up to work on time? Like, do you have a good attitude? Can you handle criticism? Like, it's the same question. And I think we are the last refuge. Like, Anthony Bourdain talked about all the time. Like, we're the last refuge of someplace where you can truly make something of yourself. Like, you can, like, I am a perfect example, like, it was either the Marine Corps or it was this, and I think with hard work, I didn't go to culinary school. I didn't go to college. I didn't follow any of the steps I was supposed to do to become a chef. But I think I've surpassed where a lot of people are, and we welcome that. Like, you don't have it together, come work with us. Like,
Right. You're still trying to figure it out.
You're
All right.
You're a mental train
Garmo
wreck.
it is.
Come hang out with us for a minute, and that's what I think is amazing about the culinary arts and the restaurant world, especially
Definitely.
in this modern world.
Where everyone has a facade that everyone has it together and we all know what we're doing, and
like, we
being a
embrace
misfit.
the ones that are misfits. We, like, you see, like, I've talked to a couple of people where I'm like, you seem to have it a little too together. Like, are you sure you're going to be a right fit?
I don't know,
like,
if saute is going to be the best for you. You tried to be a server?
Like, yeah. So yeah.
I love that. And I think it's, we've talked about it a lot on this podcast, but the kitchen kind of being that band of misfits. And, we've kind of divulged into, I guess you could call it the psychology of it, as, the chef is kind of like that figure who kind of gives you that level of criticism when you're wrong, but also that kind of paternal, instinct where it's like, I'm proud of you. You did a good job.
Yeah.
Like, that chicken looks good. And I think for a lot of people who find that solace in the kitchen, like a lot of us do, it's that idea of, like, I can prove myself. I'm worth this. I'm able to produce at the level that is required at, whatever establishment that might be, 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 star.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that especially when you're a young cook, that instant gratification, like, if you put something up and the chef says it's okay and it gets past the pass and it goes out, like, you that instant gratification. And as you progress as the chef, like, you see less and less of that, but you still see the instant gratification of, like, okay, I had this idea and it worked and the people love it as a thing. But then also, as you grow, you're just learning, I think, to be a better person all around when you work in the, like as a chef. Like if you start, especially if you start like I did as a dishwasher or a busser through dishwasher through the stages, you know, like you start to like, there's no reason I should know how now to like run a business, you know, but that's because I took those steps and I paid attention and everything to where, you know, just like college or just like high school or just like anything else, you know, as long as you associate yourself with the right mentors and those mentors give you the same tools, you can get to the point where you understand food costs and labor costs and how to run a business and how to like put your ego aside and say, okay, the guests don't like this. How can we, like, this is a business, and in order to like be creative, you know, you want to be a tweezer chef, you want to be the creative chef, that's great, but you have to also know how to run the business. And I think it's on like the restaurant world is one of those last refuges where like the craftsmanship comes into play. Like there's always going to, like, you're always going to have somebody starting at the beginning, and you're going to have people throughout the stages who throughout your stages in your career, you're going to have those people there to support you and explain things to you and explain why we use everything and why you can't waste. And it's like, it's, you know, like back in the day, it was like construction or, you know, being a sailor on a pirate ship. Like, you know, you start
Yeah.
at the bottom, and by the time you're 15, 20 years in, you're the captain of a ship, and you didn't go to school and you didn't have any real world experiences, but because you stuck in and you scrubbed the decks or you scrubbed the floors and you started at the bottom, now you have seen everything from the bottom of the dish pit all the way through, and now you're running your own pirate ship. And I think that's like,
Right.
that's what I think is so exciting.
You got to run the D-lime cycle on the dish machine before you can have your own ship.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
you know, speaking a little bit about kind of passing this knowledge to the younger generation, chef, myself and Vlad are notorious for kind of stalking the gram of our guest chefs. And your plate ups, wow, next level to say the least. And
Thank you.
so, you know, plating is one of those things that even me, who has 9 years in the game and has worked for Michelin star chefs, plating is always kind of just a it's a delicate balance between hyper organizing and then just naturally. So what are, you know, maybe like 2 or 3 tips or tricks that you would kind of give, you know, the young culinarians out there who are trying to make our dishes a little bit more, you know, presentation friendly?
Sure. You know, when I'm plating a dish, like there's like, I think the first thing is like understanding the ingredient. You know, where to come from, like what's your, especially for someone like me, you know, like I for a lot of that I grew the food, like, so I was part of it. There's, you know, my kids are part of it. Like there's a lot that goes into it, but understanding your involvement in the ingredient, you know, is it something you're obsessed with? Is it something that you're like understand, um and really understand, like, I think for me, it's letting the ingredient speak for itself with adding a little bit of level. You know, if it's a carrot dish, like you see that in my food where I let the carrot shine and really just kind of free form, you know, it's in hip hop it'd be freestyle. You know, I kind of just like, I don't overthink my plate. You know, and I know some chefs that really sit there and just like drive themselves crazy. Like, well, what can I do? Does it need a puree? Does it need a foam? Does it need this? Does it need this? And I most of the time just don't really think about it. Like I'll just kind of start by pulling the carrot. Like carrots are a perfect example. Wood fire carrots became kind of like a signature dish for me, if that's what you want to call it. That's literally based on a freak accident. You know, like I was opening a restaurant with a winery in San Francisco. We were trying to use a new wood fired grill. We were trying to use a pellet grill that I had never heard of. So one got sent to my house. It got dropped off that same day. My daughter pulled all of our carrots out of our garden in our backyard. And I was like, we need to make dinner. I have a beer. I'm going to cook the carrots on the grill, you know, and that became something so simple as like, I didn't overthink it. And then just kind of as I was cooking the carrots and tasting it and seeing that's kind of where I started saying, okay, this flavor goes with this flavor goes with this, and it became something so simple. And I think if you look at my food and my dishes, there's a very simple aesthetic to it. I try. Sometimes I do go over the top, but it's very, you see what the ingredient is. If it's a beet salad, you see the beets, and usually I like to take the same philosophy from, nose to tail on an animal as I do with plating. I've done cauliflower where it was the entire dish, like is cauliflower from the start to finish, where you get I take the leaves of the cauliflower plant and I make a pesto and I set that aside. And then I take some white cauliflower and I cook it and I make a pasta out of that and I set that aside. And then I take the cauliflower the leaves, the flowers, the roasted cauliflower, the pasta, and then the flowers, and I make a dish entirely out of that. So as you eat it, you're getting the entire life cycle of the plant. I think a lot of chefs
with dishes like that, right? When you define that, the dish has to almost fit into what your restaurant is pumping out, right? Because
Sure. Yeah,
you have
absolutely.
to have that balance of, leaves to, to flower to root to whatever you are playing with it. But that does become, I think that also a big part of what it plays into in terms of how you plate and what you're putting on the plate and how much you're using of it is, what type of restaurant you're running at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I think that also goes into a lot of everything. Knowing who your clientele is, knowing the restaurant, knowing the business, knowing the financial part is a huge part of the plating also. And I think understanding who you are as a chef will open up your plating mentality. I think for me, for instance, like I didn't grow up with Instagram and Facebook and this social media platform where people were telling me how to plate food. Like I feel fortunate enough that I came up looking at what a lot of other chefs were doing, and not only from a cooking technique wise, but of plating and saying like, I like that. That's terrible. I will never do that. And then kind of picking and choosing. And I tell a lot of people, this is the first time in my 20-year career in the past 3 years where I know who I am as a chef. Like when I plate food, it makes sense for me as a person. It makes sense for the chef as a chef, the business, and then also just, for the ingredient speaking, like if I'm going to use edible flowers, like usually those edible flowers come from whatever I'm doing. If I'm going to use microgreens, it makes sense. Like, am I using cilantro because it's pretty, or does it make sense for the dish? If I'm doing a puree or a foam or anything, it always, like, I sit there and I try to put myself in the guest perspective of, like, as I'm digging in and looking at it, yes, I want it to be full, but as I take a bite, like, am I getting the full story of the ingredient? And also, does it make sense historically or for terroir? Like, in the Bay Area, does it make sense? I think a lot of people for plating make it not personal. I think they think of their plating as what other chefs do or what makes sense to another chef. And and this is just for me, but when I plate food, I try to not think about what other people are doing and what makes sense to me with the ingredient at this exact moment.
Definitely.
If I go out and I harvest the peppers or the carrots or the radish or the, urban foraging and stealing people's fruit off their trees and whatnot, like what in that moment for that dish makes sense. And then it's my job to explain that and express it. And I think as long as if you're being true to yourself and who you are, like you can see it. Like if you look at my plating, and then you get to know me, it makes sense. Like the food, you can, like, if I were to show you the cooking technique from harvesting all the way through to the plate, it makes complete sense. You see that I'm not wasting things that you might not understand from looking at a picture, but then if I explain the cooking technique to you, it all makes sense because everything is there. You know, if it's Swiss chard, but I don't want to use the stem, I'll make a puree or I'll pickle it or I'll find a way to utilize that you might not see in the actual plating. But then as a guest and you're looking at it and you take a bite, it all makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway there, you kind of talked about it, is purpose-driven plating. That every element on the dish, whatever you compose, is there for a reason,
Yeah,
and that
exactly.
it's bringing something to the overall experience.
Exactly.
The idea of putting a rosemary stem on a steak was, you know, avant-garde 20 years ago, but you think about what was the rosemary stem really providing besides,
Sure,
if they even
exactly.
burned it, maybe it was a little aromatic, maybe not, but purpose-driven plating is definitely key.
Yeah,
Or
and I
the
think
half lemon on
Yeah,
every
and it's
sure,
not
dish.
even de-seeded. It's not even de-seeded. Like,
exactly.
come
Yeah,
on, what's
and
going
that's
on here? Yeah,
and I think even the grilled lemon wedge, when it's charred, okay, it's charred. Why? What's the point of that? What's it bringing to it? And
right.
or like the just something as simple as charred parsley. Okay, it's there, but what is it bringing? Like if I'm doing wood fired carrots or confit carrots with the carrot puree from the stems, like I'll add chopped carrot tops from those same carrots as the parsley because it makes sense on the dish. And I think it's one of those things where it's like Instagram is a great platform to see what other chefs are doing and see other techniques and like I try not to steal from other chefs, but I'll see a technique where I'm like, oh man, that's great. That is a great idea. How can I utilize that? Or I'll see a technique and I'll be like, God damn it, that's a great idea. How can I utilize that? But I never try to really say like, oh, that's something I'm going to take that idea and I'm going to utilize it for myself.
Right.
Like my plating literally starts for a lot is in the garden. Like for me, harvesting, like pulling the peat from the tree and looking at the tree and seeing the leaves and seeing the peach as it is and taking in the aroma from that moment and then starting to create something in my head. And I think that is a very pure way to look at plating. If like Renee Redzepi and Christopher Costello at the restaurant in Meadowood, like a lot of their plating looks very simple and simplistic, but then if you hear the story behind it and you taste it, it makes perfect sense because height doesn't matter or being flat doesn't matter. If it makes sense to that dish, that's what it's all about. Like if I cook a radish in brown butter and then I make a brown butter powder out of that from the pan, to me that makes sense because I use the butter to cook it. Now it's got that essence of that radish that I grew myself, and even losing that flavor into the butter, I want to utilize that. So I'm going to make a powder and sprinkle it on top. Yes, I'm using an avant-garde technique,
Right.
and I'm using something that I've learned, but it's also me trying to not waste any of that I put my work into, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, what's a little maltodextrin here and there?
Right? It's cheap, it's affordable. We can.
Yeah. No,
I'm all about that. I think that everything that happened from 2000 to 2010 in terms of molecular gastronomy just slowly evaporated, and you see very minimal touches on it now.
Yeah,
like an espuma here and there. Yeah.
I think
Very
if it makes,
rarely.
if I'm looking at a dish, and like I think especially if you're a chef and you like follow trends, you can see when somebody's trying too hard, it stands out. But if you see something that's subtle and it's there and it makes sense, it's almost like job well done. Like you like because every now and then you'll look at something as a dish and a plate and you're just like, it's just missing something. Like it what is it missing? It's missing that wow factor. It's like, okay, well, this is corn, and we have the puree, we have the corn, it's all there. What do we have? Well, we have the husks. Let's make a corn husk espuma, and then, okay, we utilized our waste. And now we've brought that element of what we were missing, that cool factor that, as chefs, we're like, oh my God, it's so 2004, it's 2007. But from a guest perspective,
Right. They weren't eating that at 2000,
exactly, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like that, from a
right.
guest perspective, okay, what the hell is a corn? What is an espuma? What is a corn husk for some people? And
Right.
what is a corn husk espuma?
Yeah.
And
And
I
why
think
does the
that's
chef keep buying all this nautical equipment in the kitchen?
exactly. And I think that's, that's the way I look at plating, is like, as long as it makes sense. And I don't want anybody to ever look at my food and try to figure out what is what. I want people to be able to look at it and say, like, I get it. Job well done. Like, this is the carrot dish, and it's presented in a way that's, I very rarely will ever go out and say, like, hey, this is my dish. Like the farmers and the people, like the cooks and the farmers, are the ones who really did the work. God, like, if you believe in God or whatever, like, Mother Nature did the work, and I'm just trying to present that in a way that gives, a carrot or a
Credit where
squash.
credit's due. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I can't, like, there's nothing I can do to make it taste better than try to use all of it to make it tasty.
Yeah.
So
No.
as as we kind of get through the story, and as we kind of start getting closer to wrapping up our pod, we're really interested, how was COVID for you, especially being in that fine dining environment, being in a Napa Valley area, the Bay Area. How was that? What were those early days, early moments? What did you do? What was your COVID pivot in terms of the past year or so?
Sure. COVID was one of those things where I saw it coming. You heard people talking about it, and I was like, it'll blow over, and then, so back to the garden, I was planting, like, 2 days before they shut everything down was supposed to be my first pop-up in my garden, where you bought season tickets, and then starting every once a month, you get to go to the garden and have like a seasonal dinner, so you can see the entire season
Life cycle of the garden,
spring
yeah.
all the way into fall. Once a month you come there, you get to walk around the garden. The Nappa River is right there. Chef's cooking there with the oven, like a wood fire oven, wood fire grill, everything, like pulling out of the garden, everything. And when it happened, I was like, okay, whatever. And then I started noticing that it wasn't going to get better. And so I kind of, unlike a lot of people, I didn't hustle, and I kind of just took a step back. I had been working up at this point for 18, 19 years, like nonstop. So I kind of just took a break. My dad had a stroke also right before COVID, so I went back to Arizona to help out the family, and I was just kind of took a step back, and I think that really kind of changed who I was as a chef. I was cooking for the first time as a chef. I was making dinner with my parents and sitting down and eating dinner with my parents, which I realized had never happened. And hanging out, getting to know my parents, and getting that connection where you hear a lot of chefs in their early career talk about, like, you hear a lot of chefs talk about the early stages in their life cooking with their parents. I didn't have that. So now I'm recreating that, and cooking over a Weber grill, and, teaching my mom how to grow carrots, and, like, kind of role reversal. And it was kind of funny because I know a lot of people that, lost their businesses and struggled, but COVID really gave me, like, let me rebalance and decide who I was as a chef. Like, I got to take a step back and say, like, okay, who am I as a chef? Okay, I've kind of been a dick to a lot of people. I've mentored a lot of people. How do I find that middle ground of saying, look, okay, this is the old school world I grew up in. This is the new school world. How can I meet in the middle and be,
Right.
when things reopen, a better mentor to cooks? And how can I be a better chef to the people, like, you know, to our guests, and what our guests going to want? And my food, I think, got a lot simpler, you know, my food's not necessarily ever been really complicated, but now it's like I cook to make true, genuine happiness, you know, because I actually got to experience those times with my parents. And, you know, like, you know, my father having a stroke made me realize that I don't have a lot more time with him. And so that then, of course, made me think, okay, my kids, how much time have I spent with my kids? I'm like, like, I missed so much because I had to work. Okay, let's resettle. And that's, so COVID kind of saved me as a chef and made me realize that there is a medium between being the hardworking chef and running a business and being at work all the time, but also drawing those lines and saying, okay, like, I will be here 12, 14 hours a day, but Sunday is my daughter's first recital. So we need to figure it out, because I'm going to take that time. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be at my daughter's birthday or my son's birthday party or my son's baseball practice. And I think because of COVID, I had that year to step back and realize so many things. And, you know, it's hard now coming back into COVID and realizing how many people have lost their businesses or their careers or their industries, or have rethought their careers. And I got to rethink my career too. But for me, you know, taking something negative and being able to look at something positive has really shaped a lot of who I'm going to be as a chef moving forward, and who I want to be as a chef moving forward. Not only who I need to be in order to mentor the next generation to cook, but, like, you know, realizing that they're, you know, it's not cool. It's cool to be a hard worker and show your kids that hard work pays off, and showing your kids that work ethic, but it's not cool to be an absentee father because of work. So COVID's kind of been I'm still trying to figure out where, like, hopefully soon I'll be able to draw a line and say, this is what COVID taught me. But I think with all of America and the rest of the world, I'm still trying to figure out what COVID has meant for me.
Yeah, that's like you said, it kind of, you know, gave you that opportunity to take a step back. But also in that instance, I hope that, you know, 5 years from now, and, you know, I was guilty of this too, we don't all fall back into that habit of, like, you know, 14-hour days, 6 days a week. We're just grinding and we don't see the other side. You know, myself included, I got furloughed from the very, very big Florida company I was working for. And you kind of take that step back and you realize that, oh, wow, there's like this entire other world of, you know,
Yeah.
really important things that are going on, you know, right behind me. And I didn't even understand it. And so I hope, like you said, you know, that COVID at least kind of showed us not only, you know, how valuable our time is, but how valuable chefs' times are, gardeners, farmers' times, supply chains, you know, the whole works of our industry, just kind of how fragile and valuable that it is as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's shown a lot. I think it's proven a lot in negative and positive ways too, you know.
Right.
And I like, for instance, I noticed you're wearing a True Cook shirt, you know, and, like, I love True Cooks, you know. But I see a lot of people, you know, like, for me, for instance, like, I know that I represented that old school chef mentality of, like, I am bleeding out. I cut my finger off. I'm bleeding everywhere. I put a glove on it, and I've already been here for 12 hours, and I have a whole another 8 hours to go. But I'm gonna fucking push through, and I'm gonna get it done. Like, I know that for me, I've done that. But then I saw a lot of people claiming and representing that lifestyle, and then COVID happened. Now it's time to reopen restaurants, get back into what we started this, like, we are in the hospitality world. Like, it's our job
Right.
as chefs and cooks and servers and bussers to be there for our guests as we reopen, to give our guests a place to be and a place to like get back to normalcy. You know, like that's our job. That's what we like. That's the life we chose, and I see a lot of people falling back on that. And
Yeah,
now
like
I'm
where
like,
are you all? I got like
yeah.
16
Now
open
I
cook
see
positions. Like,
the
come on,
people
guys.
who I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, you like my crew. I'm looking around now at the restaurant, and I'm like, all of these people like rode through it. You know, they're here when things got bad. Like they rode through it. Then things got really bad, they rode through it, and they're still here. And I'm like, dude, like this is like, and you know, that is also something that I've experienced with COVID. Is also like, who are the hard workers? Like, who are the true cooks? You know, who are the true chefs? Like the people that are here, you know, like, and it's always the underdogs, like myself. You know, the ones who had no place ever being a chef, and the ones who like you would never guess would be like, they're the ones that you're like, dude, this person's not gonna work out. This person's driving me fucking crazy. And those are the ones now where they're your MVPs. You know what I mean? You're like, fuck, we'd be so screwed without that person, you know? And then things are opening up. Now that chef walks in and you're like, dude, get out of here. Like, I don't even want you here. Like, I got these people here. They got a good attitude. They don't have cockiness. They're just here to work, and they'll be here to back us up. That's another thing COVID has really opened my eyes to, is like, you know, like who's really in it? Because hospitality is like, you're in it or you're not. You can be like, you're born with it or you're not, you know? And for me, like, it wasn't the fact that I wasn't making money. I had savings, you know, like I find happiness in giving people happiness. Like, I will never know true happiness if I'm doing it by myself, because that's who I am. But when I see a restaurant at full capacity doing what it's supposed to do, and I walk down the dining room and I see everybody happy, and I see, like, that's where my happiness is. And like, some people just kind of like bail on that, and it's like, dude, we're opening up as a country. Like, we need to be there to give those guests that, like, we need to be there to welcome people with open arms. And
exactly.
You know, like, we need to be there to take food off of the farmers who have been struggling. Like, it's up to us now to say, like, what do you have? Like, I'll take your waste, give it to me. I'll pickle it, I'll brine it, I'll grill it. I will give it to me, and I'll give it to our guests. And a lot of, like, it's like, okay, well, now the real people with their true colors are showing.
Definitely.
And I know that's probably going to piss off some people, but whatever.
I think you said it, you know, from your perspective and your experiences and what you've dealt with, you know, in your personal area, you know, of expertise, and like the area that you kind of, you know, are a part of in terms of like what culinary things are happening there. And it's obviously going to vary a little bit here and there, but for most of the country, I think you said it, you know, you said the truth, and the truth doesn't always sound good, and it's not as easy to swallow, but yeah, I mean, even
it's the truth.
You know, a lot of my closest friends who are, you know, going to be a sous chef within the next 6 months just completely went and moved into different industries, or, you know, they had that time to relax, and, you know, they went home and their brother was doing something else, and they, you know, started doing something else. And it is hard to bring in, you know, and not to say, but like, you know, especially in a fine dining environment, you've grown up in that as well, but they call, you know, line cooks and commis kids, and I always hated that, never understood it. Like, I'm 18, I'm 22, I'm not a kid. But when it comes down to, are you gonna come and take care of this, and is this gonna be done, I think that, you know, at least 70% of those line cooks and commis are gonna find an excuse or find something to not, you know, not push through. And then, you know, your junior sous chefs and your sous chefs and people that you can, you know, hold more accountable, you give a little bit more of that, you know, respect, because they are taking a little bit more of that responsibility as well. And, you know, I think that's, you know, very true, is who do we have to rely on, and who's the backbone and foundation of, you know, what are we standing on today and where can we go forward is really like the people you have is what the menu is going to be. You know, it's not like
Yeah.
you can do, you know, if nobody's, you know, on that same page, then you need to figure that out so everybody gets on that same page. And it's definitely a really hard time to come back as a cook. I mean, there's going to be a lot expected from you. The times are not going to be, the restaurant isn't a well-oiled machine anymore. I mean, there's been a pause. There's been
Yeah,
a
the
break.
machine's been down for an hour
Right.
for an
And
entire year. Yeah.
No,
so
I agree with exactly what you're saying. And it's true. You know, like the people I can rely on now are people I would never thought I would ever rely on. You know, the people that I thought I could rely on are gone. You know, and I'm like, they're like, you know, I slide into their DMs and I'm like, dude, you are such I'm not mad, but I'm just disappointed. You know, like you fucking like you claim to be like one of us, and I drink your Kool-Aid, and now I'm just like, where are you? Like, you know, like I asked people who used to be my sous chefs, who I used to depend on, like, hey, can you come help me out just for a couple hours? You know, a couple hours a week. No, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm out of it. I'm like, really? You know, like, because again, like the hospitality world, like it's like, you know, I don't know. I feel like we are a different world. Like we used to be a pack, a band of brothers, like or brothers, band of sisters, where it's like we grind off of this, you know. And now it's like, really, you're not gonna come help me out, dude? What the fuck, you know? But then there was a time, you know, not to go into details or names, but like this restaurant I'm at right now in Vallejo, it was me and a 60-year-old dude who has arthritis, so he only has 2 fingers and a thumb in one hand. And like I would be screaming at the owner, I'm like, I'm opening and closing with 3.5 hands. Like we have 3.5 hands running the line, prepping, cleaning, cooking, doing it all. And I was all over this dude, but he stood by me. And this guy, I would have never, ever in a million years in my post-COVID ever put my balls in his nest, you know? And now I'm like, you're my MVP. I was like, you and your 1.5 hands, like you have my support. Like I will be there. Like nobody will ever fuck with you in my kitchen. You know what I mean? Like I don't care what anybody says. Like I will go to bat for you over anything. Like if you go to jail, I won't get you out. Like you want to punch somebody for being a sucker, I'll punch them too. Like you are my MVP. And that's one of the things COVID showed me is like these guys who just out there with their tweezers and doing all this amazing stuff. Like this guy wrote it out. Like I've been in his face. Like, you know, like I've done that. I'm not screaming at you, I'm screaming with you. Or like, you know, when he's looking at me, I'm like, just cook something. Like we'll need it eventually. Just cook it, you know. But he's wrote it out with me, and he's been there. And not only that, but he's grown, and he's, you know, like we don't even have to talk to each other on the line anymore because it's just been me and him for 3 months, to where we don't have to talk to each other. We don't really even have to look at each other. We just know what we're going to do. And now it's like the idea of bringing in more people to manage. I'm like, well, we've kind of figured it out now, you know, like, do we really want to bring in some of these yahoos? Like we got it, you know? And so that's one of the other things COVID's done is like, it's really made me value the people that post COVID I would have always kind of pushed to the side. You know, resume, but like, who are you as, like, what is it driving you? Like, and that's, you know, as somebody who manages people and manages people's careers and people's future, like now I have a totally different way of looking at things of like, you know, like I have this person over here who has Michelin experience, you know, with 6 months here and 6 months here and 6 months here, but you worked at Denny's for 4 years. I think I'm going to go with you, you know, like, and that's something that I would have thought about, but because of COVID and my experiences since then, that's the way I look at things now. Like, you know, Anthony Bourdain said it best. Like, I can teach anybody how to cook, but I can't teach character. Like, I can't teach somebody to show. Like, I can't teach somebody to show up work 15 minutes early, not because I ever told them to, but because they want to make sure they're here.
I think that's a wonderful point that
coffee.
you brought up with, you know, a lot of the young guys is, you know, especially what a lot of us preach is, you know, do your time, right? But like, you know, a lot of us have shortened that time where like maybe, you know, back in 2000, early 2000s, you do 3 to 5 years at a restaurant and then move on. And then it kind of shortened to, you know, 3 years here and there and then 1 year. And now it's like what you're saying, it's 6 months. And I completely agree that it's in 6 months in any restaurant, there's not like, you're not going to be in the headspace where you're helping move the restaurant forward.
Yeah, you're just then getting it. You're just starting to understand.
You haven't even been through, you know, what Giuseppe Tentori, you know, told me when I was putting in my 2 weeks one time, you know, he's like, you haven't even been through 4 seasons yet. Like, you don't know what you don't know what winter and you know what January through March is gonna bring to it. Like, you haven't worked through that, right? So like sometimes you know you come in winter where you're like just completely slammed. Chef doesn't have any time for you, and you know once you get to that spot where okay, there's switching seasons, we're not as packed. Now chef has a little bit more time to give you and kind of grow in that area. But definitely, you know, I think that's a great perspective that you pointed out is that the character at the end of the day is what defines a person. And if you're a chef that, you know, you spend 6 months and you keep moving on and keep moving on, where are you applying that knowledge that you're learning, right? Where is that, what you're absorbing being put in? And only until you've really given enough time in a restaurant where you're like, chef, I really want to put these pea tenderels on this because it makes sense because I saw them, they're perfect, they're this, and you're like, all right, let's do it. And then you have that, you know, ownership that you're putting back into that restaurant. And then whoever works next, like after you leave, is also going to have that, you know, ownership with that. So I think that's a very great point that you said is that now that your perspective has changed and you see the real situation in a realistic matter of what you have to do as a, you know, business person, as a chef, and what is the best move for your restaurant moving forward, especially in these times that, you know, as we're fully back open, it's not like it was, you know, it's not the 1920s. People aren't, you know, buying the $6, $10, $15,000 bottles of wine for, you know, people are being a little more frugal, I feel like nowadays, especially markets and this and the new, I mean, holy, you know, it's hard
it's a different world. It's also not only just that, but it's also everything's still unpredictable. You know, like I know, especially here in California, we just stopped having to wear masks. You know, I'm fully vaccinated. You know, my whole staff is fully vaccinated, but all the counties around me are going back to masks again. And it's like, dude, are we going to shut down again? You know, but it's like, we as restaurants will still be here. You know, we have a commitment to our guests, you know, like, if you're like, for me, for instance, like the idea of closing the restaurant that I'm at right now, we're called Provisions. Like, we don't just do food. Like, we're not just a restaurant. Like, we make, you know, we sell everything, charcuterie and everything out as a Provisions restaurant, you know, like pre-made stuff, pastries, coffee. Like, we are a place you can go to be comforted, you know, and that's one of the things that drew me here. Like, I had the choice of this restaurant that doesn't make sense for me to be at in Vallejo, California, at a restaurant that's like not my style, but it is, you know, because like I could have chosen this, or I could have chosen a restaurant in Berkeley, very well established restaurant, been the chef there, and did the 30 people a night tasting menu, changed every night, which is like something that's what I specialize in. Or I could have chosen this restaurant where this is a restaurant that we cater, we strive to give people someplace to be comforted and someplace to be happy and someplace that they are welcome. And I was drawn to this place. And I think if let's say that the restaurant, let's say everything's shut down again, the core staff that I have right now, I know that if that happened at 9 p.m. and we were closed, going into work the next day, masks or not, or everything, like the staff that I have are going to be here on time, not making excuses, ready to work to make sure that every single person that needed something had what they needed. You know, like if we had to go back to making, you know, we would do Friday night suppers where it was 3 courses for $40, or pre-making, you know, TV dinners. My staff will be here. The staff that I have now are not anybody that I would have ever put my eggs in their basket, like I said, but I know that they would be here giving it their 100% at that, like without me having to having those stupid lineups where we're trying to give them motivational speeches of why we're here. Like they would just show up to work with the same attitude, ready to do it, ready to take on whatever tasks and whatever, like as we evolved and said, okay, we need to change with the business, we need to change with the times, this is what needs to happen now, this is what needs to happen tomorrow. They would just do it. And that, I think, says a lot for myself as a chef. It was a fucking learning curve, and it was like a slap in the face of like, who knows how many people in the past as a chef I ignored or didn't pay attention to or didn't put my energy into, because I had this plethora. And now I have a whole new perspective on, like, you know, who matters, you know, what matters, you know, like, again, you can't teach people character, you can't teach people hospitality, you can't teach people how to care about the next human being. You know, like these cooks that I have now are not Michelin star chefs, you know, they're not even, you know, they're fast casual Denny's cooks, but God damn it, they do exactly what I ask them to do. They won't put out anything wrong. They won't put out anything, like, they do it exactly the way I want to. They're not trying to be pretentious, tell me how I should do it, but they put it out. If it's burned, they won't put it out. You know, if we're doing pre-portioned dinners because of COVID, everything is perfect, and they put it in because they're deep down inside, like, some of these people, like, they're stuck at home, they can't go anywhere. This is their highlight of their weeks,
their
sometimes.
lifeline.
Yeah, and this is something that and they take pride in that, you know, and like that's, you know, watching, like, seeing them get frustrated if somebody's not running food, you know, because they know, like, we're giving it for the guests, and that is a totally different perspective. Like, it's always been my perspective, but actually seeing it in the work is like, it has been a very eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah, watching someone embrace that perspective. And you know, you kind of talked about it a little bit, but as we wrap up, you know, where can our followers, where can your followers kind of find you if they want to come, you know, see you, if they want to come try some of your food? You know, what's a good place to reach you?
Yeah, so my Instagram, Chef Kyle Young, or also Provisions in Vallejo, California. We're right at Virginia and Sacramento Street. You know, being part of the community that is on hard times, you know, like if you come to this restaurant, we're it. There's nothing going on anywhere around us. You know, we're trying to, like, we're hiring from this community. We're trying to give people the tools. Like, if you want to be a chef and you want to be a cook, or you want to be a server or barista or whatever, like, come here and we will not only pay you a livable wage, but we will invest all of our energy into giving you every tool imaginable that we can to help, because not only do we want it for a business sake, but like, we want to see Vallejo rise up. Like, Vallejo has been hit hard, and then COVID happened, and, you know, the short amount of time I've spent here in Vallejo, you know, I'm loving the community, and the community is embracing what we're doing. And yeah, I'd love to see more people, you know, like, I don't care what your background is or who you are, like, we will accept you and take you in, and, you know, if you need some food, we got you covered there too, you know.
So all you young culinarians out there, go check out chef_Kyle_Young. Definitely, like you said, go check out Vallejo, California as well. Quite a cool food scene up and coming out there. Chef, we just wanted to, wrap up with saying thank you so much for spending the
Thank
time
you.
with us tonight,
Absolutely.
spending the time with me and Truffle Boy here, kind of going over so many important things in the industry. And it's always a pleasure having
Absolutely.
interesting
Thank you.
perspectives on here and just being able to divulge into, all these little tidbits of information kind of help paint a bigger story of our industry. So we really appreciate that.
No, I appreciate you guys. Had a lot of fun. It's been
Yeah,
fun.
it was awesome. Awesome to
Thank you.
get to know you. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for coming on, and we'll be showing you lots of love as the day come, and
Yes.
hopefully we can bring you back on and do a little bit more
Absolutely.
about vegetal stuff, and maybe check out as we get along how you've been and what you've been up to. But we definitely want
Likewise.
to keep
Sure.
this friendship nice and
Likewise. It's always fun to sit around, just kind of talk shop,
Yeah,
you don't get that
exactly.
very much. So it's always fun to just kind of sit back and talk to people who kind of appreciate the
Yeah,
chef.
and
Like,
it's so awesome
if
that
three
we're
chefs get along together, it's kind of like the conversation keep going for hours. So.
just out of
exactly.
curiosity, so did you work at or just stage at TFL?
That was a 1 month stage.
So
Nice.
in the times you were there, was Mark Hopper a chef there?
Mark Hopper.
Always
The
had
last
like
name
gray
sounds familiar.
spiky hair and would say house cleaning in the
No,
backyard.
no. But I know who he is.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah,
he was there, they were station partners with Grant Atkins. And
yeah, that
then
was way before my time. I
and
was there
then
way, yeah.
he stuck it out there when Grant went to Chicago, and then once
Yeah.
I ended up working at Royster, Grant brought him as a CDC for like the linear group,
Yeah,
and we got a lot
yeah. I
of
was there in
that.
2000.
No, go for it. You
I
were
was there
there
in
for.
2012. I was there in 2012, so that was before my time.
Got
Yeah, I
it.
was with Timothy Hollingsworth at Brunwald Pine Nuts my first day.
Oof. Oh, I probably had some
Yeah.
I probably had some chefs who staged with you because I've heard the Brunoise pine nut story a few times.
Dude, I think if they like fuck with us, like it's like
yeah.
because I don't know how to do it. I don't know what's happening. You look around.
How thin of a blade and how sharp does your knife have to be?
I use my meat slicer to do it,
Nice.
like my thin shun meat slicer. That's the only thing that could do it. Although everything else just like as soon as like
Crumbled
I put
it,
in
yeah.
pressure, I was like crumb, and I was like, God damn it! Like had to throw it away, start again. And finally, I was like, started with this knife, worked my way through the knife bag. I was like, using my chicken knife, my parrot knife, everything. I was like, oh fuck, man! I was like, they're totally gonna I'm gonna run out of pine nuts.
Nothing beats those moments where you're staging and you're just like not in your comfort zone, and the only person you have is like you and your inner voice and your mentors. That
like the guy next to you is like watching you, hoping you fail.
Yeah.
It's like there like you don't want to go ask somebody like because you already lied, you already bullshitted your way into it. Like, hey, I got this, so you don't want to like set yourself up for failure, but everybody's looking at you, but they're all watching you, letting you fail, so you have no choice but to like just like, oh god damn it, like I gotta make it happen, and then finally like you figure it out, and then you start looking, okay, I have this many pine nuts, I need 2.5 okay, if I stop fucking up 10 minutes ago, I'm good,
right.
like, yeah, no, but again, it was like a lot of people ask about that experience, and like I love staging. I love the art of staging. Like I think that's like the lost art of staging, because if you're like, especially when somebody comes to stage for me, I'm not paying you to set up a station, so I'm gonna spend some more time. Like you can ask me whatever you want, because you're like, I'm gonna make you do it now, and I'm gonna like, and like, so I didn't take it as an experience to see, like I could read the book, like I got the cooking techniques, but it was just watching the standards of service is, I think, was
watching it actually happen.
Watching the way they like clean and the way they work and the actions of people and the way they run service, and that's what I like. That's what I take from staging in places. It's not necessarily like what are they doing. Am I gonna like? I'm not gonna write recipes. Like, yeah, I'm gonna do what I'm asked of, but it's like watching people and like 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 it's one thing that cutting tape before you understand, but then being like when you cut tape and see exactly, and then everybody like pulling things from the walk and scrubbing things and everything. It's just like, you know, it just, you start to run a kitchen completely differently because you start to look at those things that as a cook, when you're busy setting up your mise en place on a kitchen, you know, you miss those things, but then you take yourself out of and you can watch why everything else happens. Then you start to notice, oh, that makes sense. And then you go to your, like, now when I walk into a kitchen, like, or like, I love going to eat and I watch, but now I look for different things, not necessarily how is the guy cooking a scallop. I'm looking at like the, you know, the way they work together, the way they call tickets, like the way the chef like manages the team. You know, that's what excitement really gets started. You know, I think, you know, what makes some of the best 3 Michelin star chefs in the world the best chefs is not necessarily not taken away from any of them. You know, Grant Atkins, Thomas Keller, Christopher Costell, all these chefs are amazing and they have a vision, but it's being able to share that vision and get everybody on board and sharing, okay, this is what I want, and making everybody understand. And that's what I try to do with everybody from my dishwasher all the way up to my cooks. Is like everybody makes a very important role. And like,
Yeah.
you know, in order for you to get to where I'm Thomas Keller and this is the French Laundry, everything has to just perfectly mold into that position. And that's what I think, you know, staging in TFL, and, you know, like I used to stage for 12 Days of Christmas when I worked at Meadowood, but I didn't work at the restaurant at Meadowood, but I'd stage during 12 Days of Christmas at the restaurant at Meadowood, and I get to see all these different chefs doing all these different things, watching the steps and standards, service and stuff. And that's, you know, again, as a young cook and as a young chef, what not to do and what to do. It's not just about the food. It's not just about learning recipes and technique. It's about like understanding how to call tickets and how to make picks and how to like deal with guest perception, everything. And that's, I think, will help you if that's, you know, if running a restaurant's what you want to do. I think going and staging at every restaurant you can, and the more higher end you can, because even if you're a taqueria, if you've seen these standards, the high end restaurants, you can apply them to any restaurant. You know, food costs, everything will line up.
Yeah, and like you said, it kind of broadens your horizons too. You start to realize what's possible out there. If you've never seen it done, then you don't know if it can actually be done. But being able to see it in action, in service, is huge. And
Yeah,
like we said, Chef, just thank you so much for coming on tonight and sharing this knowledge with us and experience. Like Truffle Boy said, we're definitely gonna have to do a part 2 of this. We could talk to you for hours, and like all of our guest chefs, it's just awesome to be able to share experiences, share those funny memories, and there's just sort of a connection that we grow here, but we hope to grow with our followers and everybody listening at home. Whatever you guys are doing, we hope that you guys kind of start to feel that connection as we continue to grow this community at Late Night with Chefs and continue to kind of build the symbiotic chef journey, you know, whether it's in the USA, Canada, across the sea, wherever that might be.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Cheers.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, and please like, follow, comment, subscribe, and we will see you all next